Okay. Well, man, dude, there's so much we're taking away from this conversation. It's mind-blowing.
Yeah, we said we took a week off, but we jam-packed this bad boy for you.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So, bada bing, bada boom. What do you think?
I mean, we got to figure, maybe we figure, I don't know.
Okay. Good chat. All right. Right on.
Welcome back to the hunt for Posy's treasure. This is episode number 8. Date of recording is July the 3rd, 2025. Now, for those of y'all who follow this podcast regularly, you noticed we took a little bit of a week off, so a belated apology for that. Yours truly, Tron, was traveling the United States, and we've talked about, treasure hunting. It's not a full-time job. It's a hobby. Well, if treasure hunting is a hobby, I don't know what you then consider doing a podcast about treasure hunting. But that's kind of, in terms of the priorities, what happened. But to make up for y'all, I know it was a massive week in the universe that is the hunt for Posy's treasure, and that was specifically because the man himself, Justin Posey, traveled to Montana to do a book signing. I'll spare you the news, but nobody gave us a boots-on-the-ground account, so we this week are going to dive into the extensive Q&A that Justin did for the audience. But before we get to that, I'm going to turn to my co-host, the Cowboy. How have you been doing? How's the search going? What's going on with your latest solve?
Wow, thank you. Yes, we had to take the week off. I mean, because quite frankly, I was on the road searching for the treasure. I was out there. Yes, I was technically on a business trip, but that doesn't mean my eyes weren't open and I wasn't looking for it where I was. It may not be in downtown San Francisco, like where I had to be for work, but I was still looking for it nonetheless, eyes wide. Yes, I didn't find it if there was any question there. So yes, very happy to be back. Yeah, there has been a lot of news coming out and clips and all kinds of stuff I've seen of Justin giving the talk in Montana, Dillon, Montana, correct? It's Dillon, Montana
Yes.
He was at, which again is in a very interesting space because there's a lot of hot spots around that people are theorizing that it could be at. So yes, huge episode. I'm excited to be back. It's great to come back to the pod and have so much to talk about, and I'm excited to get going.
Yes. Obviously, we knew going into it, book signing, big event, maybe there'd be some interesting anecdotes that emerged from it, but I didn't expect there was going to be this extensive Q&A, and he answered some very interesting questions. He confirmed several of our theories, some of which we even just talked about last episode, so that was cool. But yeah, I mean, let's just do it. Let's just dive into it. And so Justin took the stage after the book signing. I guess people were able to submit their questions in advance, and he pre-selected which ones he wanted to address. And so this is going to be 95% of them. There were one or two that legitimately had no information or connection to the hunt, so I have skipped that. But we're going to dive in here. And this is the one I talked about, baby. We talked about this last episode under the critical assumptions. The question is, okay, Justin, Forrest Fenn's first clue in his poem was begin it where warm waters hold. They said, can you tell us what is your first clue in the poem? And Justin says, I think the most actionable first clue in the poem that gives you sufficient context would be, quote, as hope surges, clear and bright, a.k.a. the first line of the second stanza.
Unbelievable bit of information, which we totally talked about on the pod, about eliminating the first stanza, and it's starting with that line, and he has just completely confirmed that, which is, okay, you might want to write that one down, listeners. That's interesting.
Yeah, that's right. And I know nobody in the world probably ever has theorized that at all. So, like,
No, except for us on this podcast. Yeah.
yeah. So that credit goes solely to us. But no, as we said, go back and listen to it if you haven't, or refresh yourself if you had. We talked about it. The first stanza just doesn't feel like there's really instructions in terms of actions. It's really that first sentence of the second stanza, which he talked about. Those are the instructions. So that's really where the hunt starts. That is the quote-unquote first clue of the poem, first line of the second stanza.
Yeah, I'm also convinced that Hope is the name of a river or stream or something that, obviously. And there is a Hope stream in Montana, just pointing that out, in the greater region we've been talking about. But let's continue.
All right, let's continue. Next question. They just got right to it. They said, has anyone reached the checkpoint? And as I'm reading these will be verbatim answers from the transcribed Q&A here. So he says, has anyone reached the checkpoint? To my uncertain knowledge, no. I'll also say that as far as I know, surprisingly, I have not heard anyone mention the correct answer to the cipher yet. And I think I mentioned there is one other arguably technical thing that is involved in solving this. It's not like a core part of the poem, but it's something that I think people would find interesting. And only one person in the world has solved it so far, and they've been very quiet about it. He goes on to say, I don't think I've seen it, but then he corrects himself and says, actually, no. I did see it one time on one social media venue, which was actually kind of funny because everyone blew right past him, being the poster, and didn't give him the time of day, and no one noticed that he had figured it out.
So there is a cipher. Someone has found it. It's online somewhere.
No. Well, that's separate. We talked about there's a cipher and then there's a second technical clue.
Oh.
He says the technical clue has been solved.
Oh my gosh. Are we going to just be digging through all these old social media posts now? It sounds like it must have been a while ago because he had a hard time. It wasn't like he saw it last week. So maybe we go back from the beginning and just start reading through all the shit.
I mean, I think there was a Reddit thread about this specifically. They're like, who was it? Like, have you gone back and deleted your post? We don't know if it's Reddit, though. He says social media site, and I don't know if I consider Reddit specifically social media, so I'm more inclined
I think he would consider it social. What is he going to say? Like,
okay.
He doesn't want to say exactly what the source is. Social media is the obvious phrasing to go to.
Yeah.
What is he going to be like? Oh, on an online discussion platform.
A forum.
Yeah, okay, he could have said forum, but like, social media. Reddit is social media.
Okay.
I don't. Yeah.
Or Twitter, but yeah.
Yeah. Or Twitter. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
So if you're out there, if you've been trying to hunt this down, going through Justin's interactions, his replies on Twitter, all that type of thing, you find anything interesting, send it our way. But yes, so to recap there, no one has reached the checkpoint. No one has solved the cipher, but somebody, one person, accordingly, has record online of solving this technical clue. But again, he said the technical clue isn't even that massive, so I don't even know if we're making a hoopla over this in the end. And clearly, like, when he said it, people skimmed over it, so it wasn't like it unlocked things for people, so who knows?
Wait, let's unpack that a hair. Like, can you please explain to me how the technical clue can be helpful but also not helpful at the same time?
I don't know. Like, I think it might illuminate maybe a broader area. It's a very good question. I don't know.
I guess maybe if it's like I don't know. Maybe it just it helps point you in the right direction possibly.
Yeah, right?
Like it could be, maybe it's something where it's like it does define, if you figure out the technical clue, it'll say like it's in Montana. And you're like, "Oh, okay, well that helps." But it's not solving it. Yeah.
Yeah, and the main takeaway for me from these answers is it turned my idea of the cipher and my approach to all that completely on its head. And to be frank, I think I've wasted a ton of time, and I'm now, you checked into Cipher Town. I'm now officially, I got my apartment sublet. I'm out of there, dude. I think I'm bailing on the cipher, but we'll get to that in a bit here.
At what point did Justin bring up this podcast and his admiration for us? Was that early or later on in his Q&A?
I think I cut that section because
we don't want to
hunt. Yeah.
We don't need to lead with it. Yeah. Keep going.
Yeah, but we're certainly with some multiple shout outs. But that's it. Let's then go on to the next question, which I thought was a very interesting question. I was surprised he answered it. The question is, are you at least halfway through the poem Clues when you reach the checkpoint? And he says, yes, I think so. So basically, we've talked about the poem effectively is a series of clues that lead you step by step to the location of the poem. This is now saying you're at least halfway through the sequence of clues when you hit this checkpoint. It's not like, oh, your second or third step on the journey, boom, checkpoint. It's at least halfway through is what he's saying.
Yeah, again, that's like so there's a lot of now things that are starting to stack up that become a lot clearer. You know what I mean? Like, we're starting to get a lot more focused here, I guess. He's taking a lot of the guesswork out of it. So let me pull up the poem here, and I want to like identify what you would think is halfway through. Is he saying halfway through the clues or halfway through the poem? Is it vague?
Are you at least halfway through the poem Clues was the exact wording when you reach the checkpoint.
So clues.
So if there's 10 clues in the poem, he's saying you're at least through 5 of the clues by the time you reach the checkpoint.
So that would be, if I'm looking at this here, and we know now, as hope surges clear and bright, walk near water, silent flight.
That's number 1, yeah.
Yeah. Walk near water, silent flight. Well, I'm just saying, like, if we go back to this, not the first stanza, right, we've obviously, and then if we also push back that last stanza, which we had, the middle of it would be the third stanza, which is right in the middle, which is the in Ursa, I can read, I promise. In Ursa East, it's just small font. I need to make this font bigger. Hang on. I can read. Don't sit there laughing at me. I can read. I can read. Relax. In Ursa East, his realm awaits. His bride stands guard at ancient gates. Her foot of 3 at 20 degree return her face to find the place. I'm telling you, man. Her foot of 3 at 20 degree is there something about that line, man?
Well, we last week, too, I theorized it's where the semicolon is, which I think is right around that middle part of the poem. So, that said, don't expect to find the checkpoint early on in your search, I think is the gist of it. It's roughly at least halfway through your sequence of clues, your solve, all that. Anyways, let's move on to the next one. Something that I think a lot of people didn't know existed. You didn't know it existed. I knew it existed, but I'm an idiot and haven't listened to it yet, so I need to go listen to it. But the question is, are there any clues or hints in the songs? I couldn't tell if he had said singular or plural. Justin said yes, and the most well-known one is there's a song out there called Beyond the Map's Edge, which is a somewhat kind of techno type of song. It's by, the artist is Arcade, Arkade. You can find it on Spotify, I'm sure other places as well. There are lyrics in it. And so he confirms that there's clues within the song. Or songs. If there's other songs, let me know. But have you listened to that song yet?
No, I'm 36. My EDM days are about 10 years behind me. Have not heard it, not familiar. Have you?
I've not, like I said, sounds interesting. Gonna look up the lyrics. That'll be a topic to revisit at a later episode, but we're going to truck on. As I said, this thing's jam-packed. It was an hour, 20-minute Q&A, and it was damn near all Q's and A's in there. So next up, we've talked about how Justin traveled. He mentions 9,000 miles in 2 trips. They said, is there a hint in the statement that you traveled over 9,000 miles in 2 trips? And here's his answer. The purpose of the over 9,000 mile statement was to convey that I traveled a great distance throughout the Rockies and the American West as part of hiding treasure. And it's not really meant to read anything more than that. It's basically meant to say that I traveled a great distance and somewhere along my route I hid the treasure. I could have been at, the beginning of the route, in the middle, in the end, or somewhere along the path.
Yeah, okay, that's not, I guess, one of the more detailed, helpful clues. Yeah.
No, I don't think it's helpful, but it's ruling things out. I mean, we theorized this in the past, like 4,500 miles, that could take you all the way to Alaska. Like, what do we do with this? And he's saying that's not really, don't read into it, don't waste your time.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff we flag on this show is like that's helpful in itself. Maybe it's not a clue, but to know it's not a clue, it takes that piece of the puzzle off the table, you know?
Yeah, I mean, just for the record, that's what I thought too. But yes, I completely said that. I thought you guys were wasting your time. But yes, continue.
All right, we will let the record show that. Next, this one here. Interesting, all right? They said, for anyone who would struggle with carrying 60 pounds in one trip, can you give us any advice on how to retrieve the treasure container and its contents successfully? So in other words, if I can't carry the treasure and the container in one trip, what's your advice? And he says, so if you figured out exactly where the treasure is at, you will have sufficient time to plan how you wish to retrieve it. Which I think is a really loaded answer. What are your initial thoughts on that?
Say that one more time.
He says, if you figured out exactly where the treasure is, you will have sufficient time to plan how you wish to retrieve it. Now, my take is that kind of says, like, when you solve this, you're going to have a very definitive idea of, like, this is it. It is there without actually being there. You know what I mean? Like, what do you take from that response?
Yeah, I didn't take it that way. I took it. I'm not sure exactly what it means. He's saying that when you find the treasure,
when you figure out exactly where the treasure is at, out.
Oh, when you figure it out, you'll have plenty of time to
plan how you're gonna go get it. Basically, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, sounds to me like you can have almost confirmation of where it is without actually being boots on the ground. But again, I don't know. It's an interesting, and that was it. He gave that succinctly. He didn't restate that. He was like, nope, that was his answer, and that was it.
Interesting. Wow. I mean, yeah, I guess the takeaway from that is that you can do quite a bit of like internet sleuthing to solve this. And you can yeah, I guess that's the takeaway from that, which is fascinating.
Listeners, is that how you feel? Am I full of shit?
I mean, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I generally think you're full of shit, but
okay.
I don't know how to interpret this. I mean, actually, no. How I'm interpreting it is that it sounds like you can do a bunch of the legwork online. He's basically saying, like, you can figure out generally where this is. But
that's how I feel.
Yeah. Interesting.
All right, so this one, the answer is very, very long, but it touched on so many things we've talked about, we've theorized on it, felt it was illuminating, maybe not a clue, but I liked this kind of information. So they said, why will you not tell us what the treasure container is? And he says, I've been hesitant to mention what the container is, mainly because of artificial intelligence, and also to prevent people from creating decoys, or for someone to claim that they found it and to recreate what the container looks like in order to make a farce and upset people. As we know, that happens from time to time, unfortunately. There's a bad apple in every bunch. It's not to say there are any in this room. He said it's also AI, because I think as time progresses, artificial intelligence will soon be in a position where it will be a formidable force when it comes to things like treasure hunts. And so I think it's a bigger topic. It's strange to think about, AI is on the precipice of encapsulating the entirety of human knowledge. And it's not just a function of having knowledge, it's acting on that knowledge in an intelligent manner. And so very soon AI will be smarter than any of us in this room, all of us in this room combined, and it's a bit of a paradox. How do you create a puzzle for an intellect that dwarfs your own? It's like a mouse trying to create a puzzle for a human. And that's really where we stand with artificial intelligence. And so a big portion of the time that I spent designing this treasure hunt was to make it accessible and understandable and approachable by humans, but not by AI. And that's really hard to do. So anyways, we've talked about it. Like, we got to imagine Justin ran this thing through ChatGPT, blah, blah. He confirms all that and beyond that. Like, the AI was at the forefront of his mind in doing this.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised to hear that. He's a software engineer. I'm sure he's playing with all the AI tools these days and knows them very well, but it's starting to make me think that it might be a lot more literal than people or we have given it. I don't know if there's like innuendo, or it may just be as simple as like, you just have to figure out where it is he's talking about and all of the shit adds up. It's very right on the nose. I'm starting to think that more because I don't know. That's a lot to digest, actually. Like, it kind of is a lot to... What do you think?
To me, what's most interesting is that this question is focused around the container, and he's not revealing that. But like, apparently that seems like it's a connector. And I think there's a line that's repeated that we've already revisited. We'll get to it later. But like, I think the container has massive significance, and it's not clearly, I don't think it's just going to be some like bag or chest. I think it's going to be something symbolic that
Like Tucker?
Like a dog or an animal or something that really connects it. And like he's always talked about, you'll know when you find it, all this. I think it's all kind of laid into that. And he left that layer out of the AI because I think he's assuming like AI will then really be able to kind of connect things. I don't know. That's my takeaway is really like this container is not, he's not just hiding it to be vague. It's clearly a very significant aspect or clue. That's my thought.
Well, now it's like, well, what the hell could it be? You know, like what? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, though. It makes sense. I mean, the decoy thing, of course, totally makes sense. Like, people would start, like, I guess, but yeah, of course, then. Because if it was just a chest, or it was something that was, like, easily, like, copyable, it's like, yeah, of course, then... It has to be something unique because then if he says it out loud, and let's just say it is like the statue of Tucker, it's a little statue of Tucker. You know how many of those things we get planted as decoys across the country? But it's not like people are planting decoys of chests across the country. You know what I mean? So you're right. I think it's something very specific.
Yeah. So that one was big. Then we're going to move on then. This one, a little exciting, a little scary. I don't know. We've talked about, he said nobody's reached the checkpoint. Well, they ask, do you think that once someone is successful in reaching the checkpoint, that they will be the ultimate finder? And he says, I know there are probably some folks in the room who have no idea about this checkpoint business. There's a lot of context that has built up to this. I've had a number of interviews over the past where I've mentioned that a portion of this treasure hunt involves what I, for lack of a better word, call a checkpoint. And it's a way for you to know you're trending in the right direction and kind of consider it something that you may find along the way that you realize unequivocally, without a doubt, I know that I'm correct. I did this on purpose, partially to combat some of the AI concerns. And so I think it is very fair to say whoever finds the checkpoint has an excellent chance of finding the treasure as well.
Yeah. I mean, that makes complete sense. Obviously, we've kind of theorized that the whole time. Am I missing something here? Of course, if you're going to find the checkpoint, you're likely going to find the treasure.
I mean, well, nobody's found it. It sounds like, to me, you get that far, you get the checkpoint, like, it's not going to be a 9-mile hole situation where it's like, oh, I found the checkpoint. I know it's somewhere in 9-mile hole. Then you got a whole nother search. It sounds to me like the person, it's not a race for the treasure at this point. It's a race for that checkpoint. We got to find it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Keep going. Let's keep ripping through these. I don't think that one's too significant.
All right. This one, not that insightful, but again, maybe. Were there any clues or lines in your poem that changed significantly from the first draft to the final version? And he says, I mentioned before, but those that are not aware, I wrote the bulk of the poem in a number of hours. It was probably 6 hours or less. We've been spending all this time trying to solve this stupid poem he wrote in 6 hours or less.
I know, we knew that. We'd heard it. It only took him a few hours. That's why I think it's far more literal than people are giving it credit for. I mean, I quite literally think it's like, there is a river, you follow it, you go past literally a bend, past the hole, then it's like, I think it's quite literal. You just have to find exactly where that is, which is the hard part.
Yeah, and so basically that was really the gist of it. He does say that he basically waited until the day the book went to print to actually share the entire finished poem. He did that on purpose because he didn't want to give anyone early access to it beforehand. That type of thing. He's talked about not giving anyone else a leg up. But that's to say he did not, he said he maybe tweaked 1 or 2 words tops, but he didn't go back and edit this thing. Sounds like, yeah, he 6 hours, dude. That's what we got to solve. Something this guy came up with in 6 hours.
Yeah, I'm starting to look at this quite a bit differently here, which we can talk about after the show before I sound like a total idiot. But let's keep moving.
Yeah, now we get into some more meaty stuff. Maybe not definitive about where we're at now, but where we could be. So they said, are you planning on rolling out a search state, aka letting everyone know which state it's located in? He says, there have been a lot of people asking for extra hints and clues, and I totally get it. What's a little different right now compared to Forrest's hunt is that we're March, April, May? Like 3 months in. I think Forrest, for the first couple of years, didn't really give much of anything, as I recall. And so I think we're still really early. I'm hesitant to narrow down the search area significantly to give everybody a chance because I feel like there are some people that are just starting out on this. And I know especially during the summer months, people are planning their travel, and I guess it's kind of a crappy way now that I think about it. And then he goes on an aside, I spent a lot of time searching in Idaho for forests. And then when he went and cut the states down, it was like, wow, there were a lot of people who were really upset because they spent all their time searching in places like Idaho, and then he just cuts it. He said to him, he was appreciative. I was like, thank you. I enjoyed the treasure hunting in Idaho, but I have less area to search now. So he says, I don't want people to be upset, but I think eventually, if it has not been found, I will start eliminating states. And he said, this hunt is not meant to last a millennia or anything like that. I want to continue to progress. So if there isn't any real kind of tangible progress over the coming months, I'll certainly consider that. But I'm sorry to disappoint. Tonight, I'm not going to eliminate any state, but I will consider it in the future.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think the big takeaway there is he's in this for the long haul. He's fully aware this could take years, right? He's not going to be like giving us breadcrumbs so it's solved by the end of the summer. This is for the long haul, and I respect that because this podcast needs to go for quite a long time.
Yeah, and exactly that. We're only halfway to monetization, but the other reason is like stay tuned because when he does make these narrowing downs of sorts, we'll be the first to share that. We'll be tracking it. But I thought it's interesting, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, but like we've gotten a lot of information, but there's still more to come, and he's going to give basically just enough to get people to where they need to go. So we said we need all the help we can get, Justin. Keep it coming.
Yeah.
But only to us would be cool.
Very cool. Very cool.
All right. And then he goes on a little bit of a tangent, which to verify and confirm 100% things we've talked about in the past. You talked about letting the record show like you were right. Well, let the record show I was right, because he talks about one of the problems with Forrest Fenn's treasure hunt, I felt, was that the blaze or the marker at the end was something that could not stand the test of time. There were a lot of things that could have caused the blaze to go away. It could have been a forest fire. It could have been a strong wind that blew down the tree, an earthquake. A lot of different things could cause damage like that. Actually, this is an interesting question because he says here, it was important to me that it's designed in a way, it being the hunt, where it can stand the test of time. So I don't have any clues. I didn't put anything out in the woods or the wilderness that would be subject to destruction by natural forces. Now, I can't control everything. I suppose under a very specific set of circumstances, damage could occur, but I would know if it did. And that's not fair to anyone to be out searching for anything that cannot be found. So if something like that were to happen in an astronomically low chance, I think it's only fair to everybody that I would just tell you, damn, I'm sorry. I didn't anticipate anything like that happening. So the big takeaways are, yeah, these clues are like things that nobody can, we talked about it. Like they're clues put there by God. They're not something some a-hole can go and like spray paint over or kick over. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's all built off the natural world. Yeah. And which makes me think too, like it's based around like either rivers, streams, and rock formations. Like I don't think it's trees, and I really think it's like kind of like more like larger natural components of nature. You know what I'm saying?
Well, that's actually interesting because I'm going to now jump ahead. This was a question later on in the Q&A, and we've talked about in the rules, he says like no man-made structures versus buildings type of thing. They said, do you consider railroad tracks to be a structure? Is the entire hunt based on naturally occurring structures and landscapes? And he says, I consider railroads to be a man-made structure. They were made by man. They're not a building. They are a structure. And I believe if you go back on the rules, he says the clues aren't associated with buildings, man-made buildings, but they can be associated with man-made structures. So railroads could be part of that.
What in this poem makes you think that any of this has to do with a railway?
Not me, but other people have looked into it. His mother was a railway conductor. His grandfather, I believe, has connections to the railways and stuff. So there's other folks out there that have a little bit, could answer that better than I can. But I just thought it was illuminating because he's talked about these are things that are existing that can't really be messed with, but it still could be something like a railway or a bridge. I think those are fair game, but obviously, it's not a log cabin. That would be a building. And it's not something that's easily going to go away or be damaged. He talked about, it sounds like whatever's out there could survive a forest fire, an earthquake were two things he mentioned that could have affected the blaze. So you got to assume he's insulated his clues from that. I don't know.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah, a lot to digest here. Let's keep moving. Keep going.
All right. Next up, more on this old container. Can you verify 100% that the treasure container and its contents are not a proxy item? Basically, the container and the gold treasure is actually located at the final resting spot. And he says, good question. There have been a number of people that have asked me, oh, maybe you put, something in the wilderness and it's like a key to a safety deposit box. And then you go back and then you collect your treasure. And he said, that's not what I was going for here. I wanted that shock and awe, right? You get there and you find the treasure and it's real, physical in the wilderness. And as I mentioned before, it's filled to the gills with stuff. I could not put anything else in there. It wouldn't fit, but it's out there. It's not in some bank somewhere, and it's out there hidden to be found. So that was the quote I alluded to earlier when we were talking about the container. Filled to the gills. He used that specific phrase a second time now. What?
That is interesting. Filled to the gills. It's definitely a fishing reference at this point.
It's something with fish. This container is something with fucking fish, dude.
What if it's like a mount of a fish or something like that?
Yeah, like an ancient, carved out trout in and it's like, and there's double arcs are like the shape of the fish or something, and it's nestled in one of the arcs. It's like a little, I don't know, man.
I don't know, man.
But we'll move on. This actually disproved one of the tinfoil hat theories. I'm going to go ahead and attribute this to Ladytron and let her take the fall for it. But we theorized that maybe Uncle Hiram's not even real. And actually, he is real. He was at the book signing. Apparently, he has a YouTube page of his own. But they asked him, what was the title of the book Uncle Hiram gave you? And he says, I can visualize the book, but I don't recall the title. He said, I'd be happy to announce it if you stumble upon it or you have ideas. It's not a big secret. And then they basically crowdsourced. They figured it out. So it's called Early Spanish Signs of Civilization. That is the title of the book, which was Uncle Hiram's Book of Conquistador Ciphers. Sounds like that's not significant to the hunt. He's openly saying it's out there. Check it out. So cross that one off the list.
Copy that. All right, move on. Got it.
All right. What is your best advice to approaching a solve? The book? The poem? The show? What strategy is the best process? And he says, I think most people that have heard about this had no idea about this Forrest Fenn thing. So I think the show is a good primer for that, just kind of understanding a little bit about the backstory. There are definitely hints in the series that I snuck in. But, the bulk of the important stuff, I would say, is in the book and the poem. So I guess the process I would suggest is you watch the series, then you read the book, then you read the poem a few times, then you go back through it again and watch the show really, really slowly and think about each scene. And he says, I'll let you respond to this before there's a little bit of a bombshell after this.
The what's fascinating is him going back and watching the show very slowly.
Yeah.
That to me is like, well, they clearly edited something in there that you want us to see, and you're saying watch it slowly. I mean, let's not parse words here. That means pay attention because it's right there in front of you, basically.
Frame by frame, yeah. Well, so then he goes on, and it's actually kind of funny, he says. To my uncertain knowledge, there are 2 hints in the Netflix series that I laugh every time they come up because to me, they're just super obvious, but no one has noticed. And I'm kind of blown away at this point. I feel like it's a joke or something that no one's telling me. There are 2 scenes in particular where I just don't understand that people haven't figured out a clue because it's super obvious. I says, I almost want to just say it. And then the audience goes, say it. And everyone applaud.
Yeah. Wow.
So, yeah.
Okay, maybe we should go back and watch it.
I feel like every frame of this has already been analyzed, and we're clearly missing something right in front of our nose. So yeah, that's my plans at some point soon here. Go back, rewatch. There's more about this though, so stay tuned. I know y'all got your little crayons and notebooks out jotting down. We're going to revisit that, but let's move on. Basically, they ask him about the clues that are in the Netflix doc. And he says, I don't recall which episode. It's either episode 2 or 3. And it is a scene that does not have me in it, but is a scene that I had some control over. I think if you rewatch it, it'll be pretty obvious.
Interesting.
So that really narrows it down. We got to go find what are the scenes he had control over, but he actually isn't in. I don't know, man.
Didn't have control over, but he's in. Well, that would be the interviews, no?
I guess some of the B-roll, but I felt like he was in all of it. He's setting the clock. He's doing the metals work. He's, But I don't know. Again, we got to go back and it's really obvious. I want to go watch it now.
Me too, man. Me too. This is one of the more mind-blowing. This is crazy.
Yeah, and then this is just a general tip, which I thought was very helpful. They said, what app or system do you recommend to see established property lines to make sure we stay on public land? And he says, for those who don't know, the treasure is publicly accessible. You don't have to go gallivanting on someone's private property. Please don't do that. And then he says, so there are a few apps out there that I think they're both available on Android and iOS. One of them is the most approachable. It's called Onyx, O-N-X. And they have a backpacking version and a hunting one. He says either of those will do. And then you can see if there's a search area you're interested in. You can zoom in and it'll show you all the surrounding property rights. So you don't have to guess. And he said if it's not publicly accessible land, just cross it off right away. And then if you're a more advanced user, there is an app called Gaia, G-A-I-A. He said it's more advanced because there's a ton of different layers that you can add to it, and it's not for the faint of heart. But Onyx does great.
Good to know.
Have you used any of those?
I haven't used any of those. Have you?
No, but I know you were looking at them topographic maps, so I was wondering if maybe that was where you were at.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have an idea of what the clue is that he's talking about in the Netflix. I think, especially with that comment, I'm pretty sure I know exactly what he's talking about. I just haven't been able to figure it out. What were the names of those again? Onyx?
O-N-X.
O-N-X, okay.
And G-A-I-A, Gaia.
Okay.
But moving on. They say, will you specify if it's on federal land or state land? And he said, nope, but it's publicly accessible as of today, which that interview was done on June 29th, I believe, 2025. And now it gets a little hairy. This answer. I didn't like. It wrinkled things up a little bit too much in my mind. A lot of people are saying that we can use the waterways through private land to get to it. And he says, "Oh, we have a loophole virtuoso in the crowd. I hope I don't screw up the law here, so don't take legal advice from me, but it is my understanding that in many places in Montana, if you are on a waterway that is considered navigable, in other words, one where you can float a watercraft through private property, and the person has allowed access to that area, then you might want to, it's fair to say that's fair game." So now it's like, what? It's publicly accessible land, but maybe you have to go on a waterway through private land to get to it? I don't know about that.
I don't know about that either. Interesting.
The fact that he says Montana specifically, though?
It's pretty wild. That is pretty on the nose. Well, I mean, he is in Montana, so maybe he's using that as a reference, but it could very easily have been a slip, right?
I don't know. So that's, he leaves the door open on that one. That is not a cross or offer. And then they ask, "Did you design and make the cover art?" He says, which I had assumed no, he just gave notes, but he says, "The cover art and book, I actually did design that first. And I gave it to a designer who iterated on it and cleaned it up to make it presentable, and I think he did a fantastic job." So it's fair to say the original image was created by me, and then we continue to evolve it. Why is this important? A lot of people think that, or debate whether or not that image has meaning, and I think the door's open on that to having meaning, the fact that he designed it, like, from the get-go. Have you looked at that at all?
I have not. As you know, I haven't gotten the book yet. I'm relying on you. But no, what's your, what do you think?
Well, I just seen there's posts where people will take the shape, because it almost like, it looks like you're looking out through a cave almost. It's like an opening. And people have compared that to different things and wondering if it has any significance. And as I've said, there's been debate. I'm not getting that in the weeds, but I think it's interesting. But I think now it's valid for those people that are exploring that. I say, hey, he kind of legitimizes that. So if you got any info on that, send it our way.
Yeah, completely agree.
Here we go. This one he had to actually have the question restated, because he wanted to make sure he answered it correctly. So they says, "Is the double arcs, or I should say, are the double arcs, something that exists or something that had to be created?" And then he asked the person to restate that again, and they said, "Did you make the arcs, or is that something that's just out there that exists, or was it man-made?" And he says, "Wow, that's a tricky question. It's actually a really strange question, knowing what I know. Let me think about this. I don't want to give away too much on this." And then he says, "So I'm going to have to punt." So he doesn't answer it, which, just the fact that he says it's a really strange question, knowing what I'm knowing. So like maybe it's a mix of both.
Well, it sounds like it's like what we talked about earlier, train tracks. Like, how do you answer that? Maybe the double arcs are arcs of like an old train,
Or both. Like maybe there's one of the arcs was a naturally occurring thing, and then there's something else on top of it, and that was man-made, and that makes double.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I just thought it was interesting because he really took his time to think about it and then was ultimately like, "I'm going to have to punt." He wouldn't answer it. So good question from whoever asked that. They said, "Now that the Netflix show came out, how many clues are in the show?" And he said, "Funny enough, I don't think I've ever counted. And some of them are kind of compound. You have to look at a number of the scenes in order to understand something singular. So with that in mind, the number of singular clues," and then he takes time to count them up, "there are at least 5 singular clues, at least. Probably more, but at least 5 in the Golden Greed Hunt for Fenn's Treasure documentary. At least 5.
I really got to rewatch that. I got to rewatch it like tonight.
And 2 of them haven't even been figured out and are super obvious and involve scenes that he had control over, but he was not in. That's where we're at.
Yeah, I got to watch that tonight. We should watch that together tonight.
All right. Well, here's the point at which, I heard the bad news. I decided Cipher Town was no longer a place for me. With this question, they said, "This cipher is tough. Can you give us a hint?" He says, "The cipher is actually really meant to be approachable. You don't need an advanced math degree or anything. Actually, you don't need a math degree at all to solve it. If you can add 2 numbers together, you can do basic multiplication, you're fine. But then this is where he drops the bombshell. The cipher is not in the poem. It is elsewhere. I'll say that.
Oh, wow.
And I should also clarify, the cipher, I couldn't help myself. It's not a critical hint. You don't need to solve the cipher to find the treasure. More than anything, the cipher is more of a nod or a hint to what the container is. Oh, shit. Maybe I might have to check back in. I don't think I fully digested that last part, but yeah, go ahead.
Read it again for me. Read the end again. Yeah, let me digest that. Read it for me.
So he talks about the cipher. You don't need to solve the cipher to find the treasure. More than anything, the cipher is more of a nod or hint to what the container is.
Whoa. Okay. So that is furthering this discussion on the container being something unique, special to this, which is really wild, right? This is like, okay, well, man, dude, there's so much we're taking away from this conversation. It's mind-blowing.
Yeah, we said we took a week off, but we jam-packed this bad boy for you.
Wow. Yeah, okay. So, bada bing, bada boom. What do you think?
I mean, we got to I don't know.
Okay, good chat. All right, right on.
No, I don't know. The fact that the cipher is not in the poem, like, then I don't even know what to do. I guess that leaves the book, but it's just too far out there, too many words, too many chapters to explore. And the fact that, and he just says it's not critical, like it's not like you need to know it. So I think I've moved on from that, but damn, that last sentence about it alludes, or it's a hint about the container. Now I'm interested a bit again, so.
Yeah, wow. I mean, I'm very fascinated with this container now. The container seems way more important than we ever thought.
Yes, indeed. And we are already approaching near an hour, so we're not even going to get through the full list of questions because I got probably 15 or 20 more to go here, but we're going to see how far we can get in the next 10 or so minutes. Let's go ahead to the next question after that cipher bombshell. They said they're talking specifically about the line of the poem, round the bend, past the hole. They ask, is it walking distance from water silent flight to round the bend and past the hole? So they're trying to get a gauge on like the scale.
Yeah. Great question, by the way. Great question.
Yeah, and he took a while on this one too. And he said, boy, I'm not sure if I want to answer this. But then he paused and he said, yes, I think that's fair.
It being fair that it is walking distance.
Yeah. Like the scale of
from
that clue to, if you look at the poem.
Yeah, well, so that makes me, because a lot of people like would associate the hole with like Big Hole River or something, like around the bend, and it's talking more like theoretical large, like you go over here, then over here. But if it's like boom, you're right here, like walking distance, that changes. It's so specific the whole way through. That's what I'm talking about. I think it's like right on the button with all of this shit. Stuff. Excuse my language.
Yeah. So, smaller scale we're working with, if you're out on the Google Maps and things are miles and miles and miles apart, I don't think he would have answered yes in that. It's just, and he's talked about accessibly, not, to everybody, able-bodied person. They're not going to be asking, some 75-year-old person to hike 12 miles to do this thing. So that was, like you said, great question. Very interesting to answer. Then we get a little crazy here with this question. The question itself wasn't that big, but he really unpacks it here. So they said, on a scale of 1 to Forrest Fenn, how would you rate the difficulty of your hunt? And he says, difficulty is such a subjective thing. I think for something that is very approachable to one person can be next to impossible for another. That's actually where a lot of my time or thinking process was spent. I designed this in a way where it can be solved in different ways, but you'll all get there at the end of the day. So there are multiple ways to solve this treasure hunt, and some are arguably more challenging than others. I think there's probably what I call a quote-unquote optimum solution. And then there's a few ways that I actually basically put in safeguards in case someone might not quite understand one clue, they could still limp along and figure it out, if that makes sense, his exact words. So he says, so I don't know how you all felt when you saw the forest fence solution or the reported solution. How did you feel? Did you think that was really hard or too easy? And he says that's different for different people. Some might have said it's the most ridiculous solution I've ever heard, and others might have said it was hard, but they just didn't like it. And he says, the issue is, I know when my solution is revealed, there are going to be people in this room that'll say that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. He says, I know it. And there'll be other people that I think maybe will be delighted by it, I hope. I did the best that I could, given the time and resources that I had, which is actually another thing I should mention. I actually thought I had more time. I really thought that the series, the Netflix series, was going to come out later in the year. And then I got a call saying, hey, it's coming out in a month and a half. And I was kind of like, this is it. He said the F word, everyone who's policing my language. He said, fuck, I got to get moving. And he meant, of course, I had already hidden the treasure, but I actually wanted more time to hammer out the book. So I called my editor and said, hey, guess what? I got a bunch of chicken scratch. You got 1 week to edit this. Good luck. So it was a total scramble. I don't think that answers the question really on a scale of 1 to forest, but it's somewhere in the middle. A lot to unpack there. Where you at?
A lot to unpack. I think it's wild that he didn't realize it was coming out that quickly. This was actually a mad scramble at the end, which makes me lean more into the simplicity of it, to be honest. Yeah, that's my first takeaway. What are you thinking?
The biggest thing for me is that he says there's multiple ways to solve it. Like it sounds like there's kind of technical, maybe lat-long clues like we've been looking at, and then there's maybe a symbolic optimal route. I don't know. It's just... I'm just surprised, I guess, nobody has solved it, because if in his mind, it sounds like he's put a lot of avenues to more pieces to the puzzle than you really need to make this work, so that, if somebody doesn't have all the answers, they can still kind of get to where they need to go. That all is just interesting to me.
It is, yeah.
Nothing definitive, but it's not a narrow path, it seems like, to find the X marks the spot, and you can kind of bounce around. So I don't know.
Yeah, wow. This is a fucking wild, excuse my language, this is a crazy episode. I'm getting distracted because now I'm starting to find it, man. I'm starting, my brain is starting to work right now.
All right, well, I don't want you to get hurt or anything like that, so we're gonna finish up with this final question. This is right in your wheelhouse. I don't even know if it's a clue at all, but I put it in there because this is your area of domain. Maybe you can find something interesting from it. But they said, how big was the biggest fish you have ever caught? And he said, well, I think my dad already added 10 pounds to it, so I'll only add 1 more pound. He joked. It was in New Mexico at Heron Lake, and it was a cool day. It was the kind of fishing I hated, which is trolling, and you got to line a line out, and it's a lead line, and it's color-coded to show how deep the water you're in, and you got a ton of line out, and the rod just almost cracks in half, and, well, we're hung up on a stump is what we thought, and I remember reeling this thing, trying to reel in the stump, and at some point, oh my gosh, it's moving, it's a fish, and actually at the time, it ended up being the second biggest trout caught in the state of New Mexico.
Wow.
It was in the local newspapers. It was exciting at the time. So he doesn't say how big it was, but that was his answer there. What's the biggest fish you've ever caught?
Me?
I guess go to your answer, but then yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that has anything to do with what he's talking about, his little trout story with the, I don't think that has anything to do with it, except it's a trout, and trout are pervasive in Montana and in most of these creeks that we're looking in. But biggest fish I've ever caught? I don't know. I was in the Halifax, Nova Scotia area one time, and we were fishing for the big Atlantic bluefin up there. I think it was we weren't taking them. They were like catch and release because it was that time of the year. But one guy got a 1,000-pound fish that day.
Woo!
Yeah, I mean, it was a total monster. And mine wasn't that big, but yeah, for sure that. But it wasn't a take situation. You let him go.
All right, well, scratch that. This is going to be the final question. They said, how do you tie your fly hook to your line? He says, well, everybody loves a good clinch knot. I think there's probably some argument as to whether or not the enhanced clinch knot is better knot than the original, but I generally prefer the classic clinch knot.
Yeah, so fly fishing knots are a totally different ball game. It's like, because the line is so fine and the holes are so small, like people literally, I don't know if you know this, you literally have to have like magnification glasses on sometimes, and like these little tiny, like they look like little mini pliers that you use with both hands to tie the knots. You don't just like use you can, but like it's such small material, you have to have like like little whatever they're called, like glasses, magnification glasses on. It's so, I don't know I don't know anything about fly fishing knots, to be honest.
All right. Well, I thought that fishing stuff was interesting. Nothing really interesting yielded, but we have had a lot of allusions to fish. I mean, the gills, a lot of these answers with fish, talking about waterways to get through public land or private lands. I don't know. I'm gravitating towards this whole fish thematic thing, and I'm going to start looking, I think, in terms of the book stories, focused maybe on the ones with fishing spots, fishing locations. I don't know, but that's what struck me. How about you? Where are you walking away from? This is only halfway through the Q&A.
I know we got a lot more to talk about next week. I want to talk to you after this. I have some ideas. My brain is starting to work, so.
All right. Well, we got some fresh potential solves. Too hot to talk about on the pod. We'll take it offline, but as we've said and as we've done, once those irons cool down a bit and are no longer, seeming super valid, we'll bring it back. We'll talk about it. We'll revisit it. But that's great to hear. You have a hot lead to pursue me. I'm going to go back, revisit that doc, maybe go frame by frame. Haven't been that active on the subreddits lately, so if there's any big takeaways that have happened since the interview, let us know. But as a final thought before we wrap up here, we've been chronicling the sagas of a fantastic listener of ours, Mr. Rocking E Adventures, who originally reached out back in June to tell us he found the treasure, he was going to retrieve it. Then we didn't hear from him. Then he came back and said he's very close. He's going to continue to keep solving. Well, we got another update from this gentleman, Mr. Rocking E Adventures, and he said on this Q&A, which we didn't get to the question today, but Justin says he's going to announce if someone reaches the checkpoint. And he said, I just emailed him my entire solve, so I'm hoping he will announce that someone has reached the checkpoint soon. As of the date of this recording, again, which is July 3rd, Justin has not made that notice, so Mr. Rocking E Adventures, I believe you have to continue to keep searching.
Wow, calling him out, huh? Just straight calling him out.
I mean, we love it. I love this. I love the Chronicles. I wish I had more information about his solve, and I hope we maybe get a detailed solve. But like we said, we're looking for listeners. We're looking for solves. We're looking for what you're out there doing.
Yes, we are. Rock and roll, baby.
Yes, indeed. Rock and roll. We talked about tying knots. We won't be tying the knot on this one. But maybe if we find this treasure, we'll have to get married so that it's evenly distributed. But that's going to do it.
What?
For this episode. You got to just listen to that. It'll make sense, all right?
Alrighty.
That's going to do it, though, for this episode. Halfway through the Q&A, but we're damn sure not halfway through this search because we've said nobody's made it to the checkpoint yet. Will it be you? I hope not, because I'm pretty sure it's going to be us.
Yeah, I'm literally solving it right now. I think I'm onto something. So we'll have updates next week.
And if we don't, probably because we got too busy at work, but maybe it's because we're out there finding this thing.
We'll see.
We will see. We will talk to you all next week on this podcast. And until then, my friends, happy hunting.
And stay safe.